So IronSight was designed from the beginning with collaboration in mind. As early as 2017, energy producers could request work on our mobile app, and drivers at other companies were able to perform that work. We showed real time where people were in the field and provided tools for communication. But there were limitations. So recently we took a big step in how collaboration works on IronSight, and we took the real-time communication features that you love and made them more powerful. So let me show you what's new. There's three things I'll be covering today. Some big things in what we're offering in our marketplace. The first is that service providers can now seamlessly work for multiple customers. And the second is that energy producers can now isolate their operations geographically or by function. And lastly, energy producers in midstream can now collaborate by sharing locations. So let's start with multi-company collaboration. Until recently, IronSight limited service providers to only work for one customer. And this has become a major issue for service providers who are running their businesses on IronSight. We were able to accommodate these workflows, but there were limitations. So now we offer first-class support for multi-company collaboration. To show how it works today, let's first just take a look back at how it used to work. Oil producers used to manage service providers in the oil producer's environment. So the oil producer defines all the configuration for their two service providers. This includes managing users and resources. Because this trucking company is managed by the oil producer, they're unable to accept work from the second oil company over here. To work around this limitation, service providers would manage multiple instances, keeping 2 copies of each user and resource in sync. And as you can imagine, it's difficult to keep track of work, stay organized in these 2 environments. So we've changed the model to match how your businesses actually work. Because service providers are no longer managed in an energy producer's environment, they have complete control over their users and resources. The big news is that service providers can accept and perform work for all of their customers. Let's dive into IronSight, see our product about how this works. Let's start with what an oil producer sees. Here, I have schedule view, which allows the energy producer to see all of their work in a calendar view. This oil producer works with 2 trucking companies to move fluid in the Permian. On the left side of schedule view, you can see your partners and their trucks. Across the top, each column is a day in my week, and this grid gives me a full picture of my week of work. Everything that's completed, ongoing, planned across all of my partners and their resources. So I'm planning work for today. And if we look at the first row in this table, it's my queue, the jobs that I need to perform. So for my first job in the morning, I want to haul produced water from a facility to a disposal. Since it's early in the day, my partner's trucks are at their yard, so I'm going to defer to their coordinators to make the dispatching decision. By dragging the job onto their company, I'm sending it into that service provider's queue. Their coordinator is going to get notified of the new job via email and make a real-time decision based on the availability of the resources. Now watch schedule here. In this case, the coordinator of a trucking company is going to assign to unit number 87. Once they make that dispatching decision, my view is automatically updated. I can see that job as soon as it moves. So keep watching in that same area. As the job is being performed, I follow along from schedule view as the driver moves from the pickup location to the destination, and I can eventually see that the job is completed. I can also follow the truck's movements from field view. Field view is a great view for getting real-time insight into what's happening in the field geographically. As a dispatcher, it's valuable knowing where my trucks are or the trucks I have available in the field so that I can optimize assignment. In this case, I have unit number 87 nearing the pickup location for the next job I need to schedule. So later in the afternoon, when I need to move my next load, I can assign directly to that truck, bypassing the trucking company's coordinators. So far, I've showed how schedule view and field view are powerful ways to control and monitor what's happening in the field. But I haven't really covered anything new. It's the same collaboration model that we've had for years. To see what's new, let's switch to the service provider perspective and see how things have changed. So I've pulled up a service provider schedule view, which looks very similar to what I showed for energy producers. These service providers all have access to the same view, but IronSight is secure. So these service providers see only their own resources and work that's been assigned to them. While this trucking company started out working for the oil producer I showed earlier, they want to use IronSight to manage all of their logistics, which will allow them to transition to fully digital field tickets and simplify their invoicing process. Their other customer, though, is not in IronSight. I'm going to show how this trucking company can manage work done for this other company, even when they're not in the system. When a trucking company gets a call on the phone to skim oil off a pond, they create the job on behalf of that company. The first step when creating a job is to select which customer it's for. Once they've made that selection, the fields are contextualized to that company. This makes data entry a breeze and avoids mistakes. Once I've filled out all the fields, the last step as a service provider is to make an assignment dispatching decision to the desired truck. In this case, I'll assign to unit number 87. Once the work has been created, from the driver's perspective, on the right-hand side here, there's no difference between work done between any of their customers. As you can see here, I have a job from our first oil company and a second company in schedule view. I have the same two jobs that are assigned to the same unit in the mobile app. The mobile app has one unified schedule that interleaves work between the two companies. So when the driver opens the job, they see all the information for that job, including the pickup and destination on the map. Once they've arrived at the pond to pick up, they start the job, notifying everybody involved. Note how schedule view reflects the driver's activity real time. If there are any questions while completing the work, the oil company and field workers can chat using job comments. Once the trucker arrives at the destination, they collect any required information and complete the job. Note how on schedule view, that information is immediately reflected to both the service provider and the energy producers coordinators. Sometime later, the trucking company's second customer is interested in optimizing their field operations and joins IronSight as well. So now we have two energy producers in IronSight managing their work and the service provider. The trucking company will no longer need to create all the work on behalf of that other company. Instead, jobs will come directly to trucks or be dispatched through my service provider queue. So keep an eye here for how work arrives into the queue of a service provider. That's it. So service providers also receive an email to ensure that they don't miss any requests. That's our new collaboration model. Service providers can now work for multiple customers, whether that company is in IronSight today or not. The second new capability I want to cover today is that was enabled with our recent changes to Marketplace is the ability for energy producers to isolate their operations functionally and geographically. IronSight's customers use this functionality to run distinct operations across the Canadian prairies all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Your operations do not match your hubs. Things are all jumbled up on the job panel. When you request new work, you'll see maintenance people alongside your logistics folks. You'll see thousands of wells along your administration buildings and facilities, and this is not always desirable. By adding hubs, you take all the people, locations, forms, and work activities that you have jumbled up and isolate them. For example, this oil producer has operations in both the Permian and the Bakken. A trucking company only works in the Permian, but a second service provider works at both. Now, when creating a job, after creating hubs, the requester will first choose which hub that job is for. After selecting the permission, only relevant information to that operation is visible. Now, the last new capability I want to highlight today is that there are new ways for you to collaborate with other energy producers. I'll highlight 2 ways we've seen that happen in recent years. So far, the examples I've shown are where an energy producer and a service provider are connected. But energy producers and midstream companies can connect in much the same way. So in this example, we have Center Midstream, who has deployed IronSight to reduce waiting times at their risers. IronSight tracks the jobs from the that the oil producer hauls to the terminal, and both parties want real-time production accounting data from that load. When the job is completed and approved, an IronSight integration sends that data to the external systems without any interaction. In another example, we have 2 energy producers who operate in the Permian and are struggling to keep pace with their huge surplus of produced water. At the same time, nearby drilling demands water and access to storage ponds. Water and pond reuse is of huge mutual benefit. Using FieldView, connected producers create and share available water and pond locations. The water teams at each company review FieldView every week to find what they need for drilling. Today, we've covered a number of exciting new possibilities offered by our recent improvements to collaboration, but we're not stopping here. We've got more improvements coming. The first is a new administration experience that makes it much easier to configure your organization and hubs. There will be usability improvements across the board, but service providers will notice the biggest difference because they'll be able to manage hubs on behalf of customers who are not yet in the platform, something that's brand new. The next improvement that we're planning is the ability for service providers to organize their users and resources into teams. This will be useful for any trucking company, but especially for those that want to maintain isolation between different teams. For example, if they were to work in different regions. Now, lastly, I touched on midstream a bit earlier by discussing how we can integrate job data into external systems, but we want to offer first-class midstream support on schedule view and field view within IronSight. With those tools, midstream companies can reduce their wait times at terminals. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us, and please feel free to connect with us about how to deploy what I've shown today in your business.
I'm Adam from IronSight, and the topic today will be how we've been extending IronSight over the last few months. And what I mean by that is just we've made it simpler than ever to collect more data on your workflows and then ultimately connect it with your existing cloud solutions. Our customers usually get started pretty simple with IronSight, just using the core set of fields to get work done in the field. So start, times, locations, what needs to be done. But over time, as they get more sophisticated and get more comfortable with the platform, we see that they identify new use cases and want to extend some of the data that's on that job and where it ends up. So this is usually driven by, they might start with, in this example, pressure and vac, but over time they want to extend it out to fluid haul, electricians, hot shots, and all those different types of services have different requirements about the data they need to collect. So that's one reason why we've had to do it. And the other one is just as we're collecting all that field information, they want to put it into their end systems to eliminate some of that manual data entry and paperwork. So what we built over the last few months is you can now add 30 new field types to a job. So I won't go through them all here, but you can see there's a lot of different ones and really opens up a lot of possibilities about the information you can collect. You might be asking, why would I want to add more fields? What's the benefit? And we think it leads to, it creates more fully scoped out requests. So when people are requesting work, they know exactly what the coordinators need to hear. The coordinators are more informed. They have all the data about the safety and environmental and operational impacts, so they can prioritize it properly. That leads to more consistent and prepared execution by the field workers because they know exactly what they're heading into when they go to do a job. And then that leads to more in-depth analytics and integrations because we have a lot more data available. You might ask, won't people complain about needing to enter more information? It's hard enough to get technology implemented. This is just more fields. Won't it be annoying? So we've created 4 ways to make it very easy to add these fields. And number 1 would be that we only ask the right users at the right time to enter this information. So this timeline I'm showing you here is when the job's requested to ultimately when it's approved on the far right. And this is just showing you how maybe the requester needs to fill in the production lost or take a photo of the issue that they see out on site during the request. The coordinator might need to approve it and attach a procedure. The technician, once they get the job out on their phone, maybe choose the pickup location. After they've gone active on the job and prior to completion, they can enter what broke, why did it break, what did you do to fix it, take another photo. So collect crucial on the job information. And then prior to it being approved, you can enter some of the costing numbers. So the point here is that the requester is not bothered with 40 different fields. They only see the 2 that they're responsible for. The second way we've made it easier is that these fields only pop onto the job dynamically based on selections you make as you're building up the job. So in the example on the left, when I choose that my division is operations, I'm not asked for a rig number. But when I say the division is well servicing, we ask for rig number. Another example over here on the right, when the activity is preventative maintenance, there's really no extra information we need. But when it's more of a corrective, like a motor base repair, it'd be useful to ask for a few more diagnostic information. The third way we've made it easy to add these fields or to add all this extra information is through field dependencies and form flows. Really the point here is that we're only showing fields if they're absolutely necessary. So if I answer yes to a question, then we ask them to provide a reason. Or on a form flow, we're doing some motor troubleshooting. If the first question is, where did it fail? If I say it's a belt, then I am asked further questions on belts and not bolts or any of the other reasons. And the fourth way is that we at IronSight always pride ourselves in having an enjoyable and good user experience. So filling out this data on our app, there's things like searchable dropdowns, field validation, memory fields that remember your last entries. You can break up large forms into multiple pages to make it easier to handle. And then, yeah, of course, autocorrect and autocomplete. Just to give you some examples how some of our customers are already using this new capability today. One of them is making multiple requests in one job request. So in this example, they're requesting tubing to be delivered out to a rig. And when this section down below they've added, and when someone hits this radio button to say yes, that indicating that there's a backhaul required, and they can add where that backhaul needs to go to and how much in the quantity. And then when they request that job, it can build up one truck that's going to do the delivery, and after they've dropped off, take the backhaul. Another example is that they put in some of their safety procedures into the job. So if you need some casing to be backhauled and it's impacted by radioactively impacted, they can hit this checkbox. And that'll add this whole section to provide more details, like drag a pin around on a map to indicate exactly where it is, and then enter as many surveys as you need that you've done on that equipment or the casing. Another way, last example here is just after a job has been requested and prior to it being dispatched, they want a foreman or an engineer to review that job to make sure it's legit, estimate the cost of it, and then approve it, and also attach a procedure. And then they can send it over to the coordinator and they can get it out into the field. So that covers the custom fields. That's one of the ways that we have extended IronSight. And the other way is consistently working on integrations. The ones that have kept us busy are bringing in data like locations and users and companies from systems like production accounting. When the job is completed, we'll create a load in that production accounting system. We've also been syncing in preventative maintenance work orders from SAP and other CMMS systems. And once those are completed in IronSight, they're marked as completed in those systems. And another way is that we've started using SCADA and field sensors to automatically create jobs. So like a tank sensor, when it hits a certain level, can create a job in IronSight. And once that job is completed, we send all the information over to invoicing systems and take truck tickets out of the mix. So the demo I'll show you today, it's pretty cool because it shows you how we can automate a lot of a job's end-to-end life cycle. So in just a few button taps, we're able to take a job from request to invoice using integrations and some of these fields that we put into the workflow. So you'll see a SCADA tank sensor that will create a job in IronSight. And then a coordinator will drag and drop that down to a truck. The driver will start it, unload, and enter some of the drop-off information like the actual volumes. And upon completion and approval, that data, I'll show you how it automatically gets sent over to an invoicing system. So this workflow shows you how we can eliminate the risk of shutting in the well from a high tank alarm. It can eliminate field operator travel to actually physically go out to that tank and check the levels and then phone around for a request for a truck. And then it'll also show you how there's no need for paper-based field tickets anymore. This is Dispatch Hub. This is the week view, and all these are different jobs that need to be done or are done. And over here are the different resources that are working on those jobs. So I'm looking at the food hauler resource type, and you can see that right here, AJ Oilfield Services has no work in their queue to dispatch. So I'll show you how a SCADA sensor here, you'll see this tank is filling up here. And once it hits a certain volume, there'll be an alarm that's triggered. So you'll see it go red. And that has now, with an integration, that will now send a job over to IronSight. So we can see now in AJ Oilfield Services queue here, there's a new job that was just created from that SCADA high tank alarm. I can open it up and review all the different details here. And I'm just going to pull up my phone. So when it comes time to dispatch, the coordinators can view the real-time locations of all the trucks and resources out in the field. So I'm going to quickly see that tank truck 87 here is close to the well and the plant. So they seem like a good choice and they're not busy. So I'm just going to drag and drop that job down to tank truck 87. You can see they get a notification here that they've got a new job. When they tap on that, it brings them into the job, and they will simply just press start. The truck would drive over to the pickup location and load up the oil, and then they would travel over to the unload location. So the coordinators over here in dispatch hub would also be able to see it moving in real time. After they unload, the next step is that there's a mandatory job form that needs to be filled out. So we'll tap fill out job form, and this is where they've been given a printout at the scale that they've unloaded at, and they're going to put in their corrected volume, which was 30.111 meters cubed. 0.4 is the water cut. They're charging by volume. There was no wait time. And then we can attach a photo of the scale ticket. And when they're ready, they just press submit. And now they slide to complete that job. So now the truck driver's job is done here, and over on Dispatch Hub, we can see that the job is now in a pending approval status. IronSight can also give approvers the ability to view the GPS breadcrumbs of where that truck was while performing the work. So you can see that it started here, and then I can see the timestamps of where it was while loading up at well A1 and unloading at plant B. You can also compare the time that it actually executed the job and the duration versus when it was planned, the requested volumes versus the corrected volumes. You can compare, or you can ensure that the information that they put in on that form is matching up with the photo that they took of the scale ticket. And we can look at the history of the job and all the important events. So I'm just going to pull up the invoicing system here over on the right. You can see that there's 22,721 tickets so far. And I'm going to open up that job that we just did together here. And I reviewed it. Everything looks great. So now I press approve. Job now goes into an approved status. And then over in this invoicing system, we can now find that job. So we can see that it's now gone up by 1. It's because we just, our integration automatically sent our data over here. And when I open it up, I can see that load is properly created here. We have all of the important information like the locations, the company that did it, the times, the line items are properly added. And there's even an attachment with a PDF of IronSight's job. So zoom in on that, and the PDF has a link back to IronSight if you need to review it. And then finally, the last thing to show you is that we can also have our real-time analytics to show you your KPIs based on fluid hauling. So we can track your total fluid hauling costs, your hours spent hauling fluid, miles traveled on each of the different types of activity, the completed loads versus number of trucks. Really anything that's interesting to you or would be a valuable KPI can be added here. So yeah, that's the demo. It's a process that was very manual, paper-based before, and we're starting to automate as many steps as we can in that process. And thanks very much for listening.